Well, hello everybody. Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And today I want to talk a little bit about the wars we can't talk about. Now, this is a situation that's going on in the world. We have not just one war going on, but we have several wars are being fought at the same time. Now, these aren't the kind of wars that have conventional weapons like bullets and bombs and things like that being dropped from high altitudes. These are the wars of ideology. These are the wars of words and their meanings. These are the wars of empathy gone awry. And a lot of these wars are being pushed and fostered and weaponized by angry white female liberals, otherwise known as AWFLs, AWFLs, angry white female liberals. It was patently clear during the No Kings protests the other week when looking at the crowd assemblies. It appears that Antifa now has an average age of 68.7 years. I mean, I've never seen so many Q-tips walking around in tight formation, trying to look like they were 10 times bigger than they were as far as crowds went. When where they come up with the 7 million number, I don't know. None of the other forensic videos can even support any of that from anywhere in the country. It was sizable, but it definitely wasn't 7 million people out on the street. So this is just one of those talking point kind of lies that goes on that's put out by these AWFLs, these angry white female liberals. Now, in that mix, there's also a bunch of men along with them, but these are basically women too. They've given up their manhood for the sake of trying to appease women who have beaten them down into submission, that they have to give up their manliness and their protectiveness for this crazy thinking that's going on that they must support. Otherwise, there'll be no sugar in your coffee for sure. So it was very hard to find dark-skinned people in the crowds. Now, this is kind of amazing because a lot of the things these No Kings people were complaining about was the fact that there seems to be these ICE raids are targeting people of dark skin and dark skin only. So you would think that if this was actually the case that was going on, that you would have a pretty formidable response by the population who's supposedly being affected. It didn't click with our black and brown-skinned American classes, because for the most part, the numbers out of these groups support the activity of ICE in removing illegal immigrants from the situation to help them get the jobs that they've been looking for too, the normal citizens. So there's jobs out there, and everyone says, well, these are the jobs that, Americans won't do. They won't clean toilets. They won't, pick, corn. Well, nobody picks corn. The machines do it. It's been that way for a long, long time. So we can get over that one. Cotton is off the table now, too. The things that might be hand-picked might be grapes and things like that. And I think a lot of that is getting mechanized as well. But the main thing is that people will work if they are hungry and motivated, and if they want to get something. Hunger doesn't have to be just about food, because we've got lots of food in this country. And a lot of people are going to be upset if they don't pass the continuing resolution that people won't get their SNAP benefits here for the beginning of November. I think something's going to come about. I think that somebody's going to have to cave on this. I hope it doesn't go the way to where billions and billions more dollars are going to be thrown away for people with health care that never paid into something. We might as well just be the hospital for the entire world with the plan that they've got going now, or at least the awfuls do. So this is all kind of coming from one side of, a very, very small side, I should say, of one side of the arguments on things. There isn't as much passion as a lot of these people want to document is happening. So I think you're being fed a boatload of lies on these things, as we all are. And it's not new. This has been going on for quite some time. So just the other day, they also arrested 9 illegal immigrants on Canal Street in New York City. Now, Canal Street, if anyone's been there, knows this is like Maxwell Street in Chicago. This is a place where illegal merchandise, fake branded merchandise is sold on the streets, counterfeit merchandise. It looks good. It may feel good, but it's not the same. Something's going to be different about it. And by and large, these goods are made by low-paid or even slave labor in many of these countries of origin on this stuff. And it's being sold on the streets by non-citizens who are pulling off on one block alone on Canal Street. It was estimated that these guys are draining over $500,000 in cash each week off the street sales, right in front of other, fully licensed and legal merchants right outside their doors. So there's an unfair competitive situation. And by and large, the customers at these things are these awfuls, these angry white female liberals from the suburbs, or the tourists who go there with this goal of getting, we're going to get something. We're going to get, a fake Rolex. I'm getting a Gucci bag or a Louis Vuitton, or as they like to say, Louis Vietnam. This is bad behavior. This is feeding the illegals. This is feeding the criminals. And this is feeding the people that are abusing child labor and slave labor in different parts of the world. They want to talk about, lifting people up. Well, they're helping to feed the funding that keeps these bad practices, these evil practices at work. So, people need to understand how the circularity of this thinking has to be completed. When you just go part way around and say, oh, I'm done. I got mine. I'm out of here. You know what? You're a fraud. You have no real conviction. You're just another selfish pig. So we need to call this what it is. If you see people out there with these things bragging about them, don't encourage them. It's not good. No one's being helped by this except for the thieves. The slaves aren't being helped at all on this. The children are not being lifted up. They're all being abused. So why are we doing this? So, and where are the people of color at these protests? Well, for one, most of them aren't customers. They might be sellers. So a lot of them have another agenda. Let's put it that way. So there's another argument that's going on, and people are saying that ICE has to be shut down, ICE has to be targeted, ICE has to be put on a software program so people can know where ICE is 24/7. They talk about U.S. citizens being dragged out of their homes just because they're black or brown. So if there's been these thousands of people that they want to talk about having been dragged out of their homes unfairly, been arrested, and all these different things, where are they? And why aren't they being showcased to say, this has been a terrible crime has been committed against my family? Well, because that 9 times out of 10, these people who say that they were unfairly targeted were probably culpable in some way or another. They may have been helping to hide these individuals, so they were breaking the law themselves. So there's all sorts of reasons for why things happen. They may have neglected or refused to identify themselves, which only lets the law enforcement people with one alternative, and that's to take them in, find out who they are, sort it all out, and then let the good ones go and keep the bad ones. That's the original plan. That's how things should work. It just makes sense. But these awfuls want to say that that's targeting illegally. We have the governor of Illinois, Pritzker, is trying to talk about how this is targeting and how Illinois is one of the safest states in the country. Well, it's got the highest rate of murder in the country, but he wants to deny that too. The statistics show that there are 18 people killed per 100,000 in the state of Illinois. That's over 2,000 a year alone in Chicago. That's an awful lot of funerals. So, Amazing Grace is being sung all over the state of Illinois, and the governor isn't hearing it. Well, one place where they are hearing Amazing Grace and other things like that, the Onward Christian Soldiers and things like that, you don't hear it on the streets of London or England anymore, because singing Christian hymns in public now is now considered an arrestable and punishable offense in the great country of England. Why? Well, a new law has been passed in England which makes it a civil crime to sing Christian hymns in public streets and public squares, even if they have a permit to gather. These songs can only be sung inside the walls with closed doors of churches and private homes and private dwellings and private businesses, types of things like that. They can't be on the street because the law says it may offend people of different faiths. May offend people of different faiths. Who are they talking about? Could it be Muslims? Well, because it was Muslim MPs that proposed the laws, and it was Muslims who overwhelmingly passed it with getting a majority from their other Labor Party people. These type of laws, which are also kind of going on in there's shutdown mode going on here in the United States too. So don't be shy about talking about this one either. This is a war that you need to be actively involved in if you're here on U.S. soil right now, because the types of things that are going on in Dearborn, Michigan are shutting down what other people would have called for years free speech and just general pleasantries in public. You know, to go around maybe to be singing Christmas carols. What's going to happen with that? Are you going to arrest Santa Claus? This will be interesting. Laws like this which shut down speech. And remember, free speech is not for speech that you like. It's for speech that you don't like. To protect that. Because right now, as the pendulum is this way, and this is the speech you don't like, well, the pendulum's going to swing back this way. And then those people are going to be saying speech that or other people aren't going to like. And so what you have to do is you have to protect the right for people to say stupid stuff. But what you have to do is you have to sit there and afterwards say, that was stupid. And you're fair to do so. And that's a proper response. And I've said before, what you need to do with these people, with these ideas that they keep trying to change, the discussions on, you have to mock them. That's the only thing that they fear, because everything else is on their side. They've already, spiked the deck against you. So you have to mock them, laugh at them, say, oh, that's cute, and, that's funny, but I don't agree with it, and walk away. That creates an even bigger storm in their head, and they have to sort that out. And this is the only way that people with these delusional thinkings that come out of the caves, this is the only way that they can accept the reality of what is going on. This all goes back to Plato's Republic. He talked about the cave dwellers coming out and having to accept reality, and that their reaction is usually going to be to attack those nearest them who brought them out of their safe cocoon in the cave, out into this area, this reality that upsets them, and they can't deal with it. And so their natural reaction is violence. This is what we're seeing. The reason that they're violent is because they know deep down inside that they're wrong, but they can't let themselves admit it, and they won't change over. They realize that their argument is faulty. So what they have to do is double down the other way, because otherwise they're going to look foolish. And this is what they can't stand, because they're narcissists. The only way through this is to deny the narcissist the fuel that makes them feel empowered, and that's to ignore them. And when you walk away, that just really pisses them off. And so much so, if they don't have an audience, then they have to say, well, that's not working. I've got to try something else. And that's when you have this breakthrough moment, when you can, get them to come back and say, look, prodigal son, come on back. I've always loved you. I just couldn't stand you for a while. All right? And that's a fair thing to say. That's honest. That's giving them regard. And it's letting them know I still loved you. I just couldn't stand you. And that's okay. That's a fair way to think about things until the behavior adjusts itself and comes back around. But by denying these things, what you're doing is you're running a protective cover for the evil which is flooding our country. And this flood is by design. And this flood has been perpetrated and is being pushed by Islamist agendas, Marxist agendas, and progressive agendas, which have all married into one, collective cluster to be used together. Now, Islamists are certainly not Western thinking. So there is nothing about Islam that marries in with Western ideologies. So this one nation under God, that's a major target for an Islamist. And so for anyone to invite these Islamists into your situation, you're foolish. And what you need to do is you need to separate and you need to call it out and say no. Because if you don't do it now, you're not going to have a chance later, and it's all going to be over. And they can turn this in one election. You don't think it can happen? Look at England. They said the same thing 10 years ago. They went after Tommy Robinson, a man whose name is really Stephen. But they went after Tommy Robinson, which is his basic public name. And they went after him, and they put him in prison. And they shut him down, and everyone says, oh, no, he's a radical. He's right-wing. The man is so centrist, it's ridiculous. He has Muslim friends and neighbors. He grew up in Luton, England, which is basically a city of about 250,000 people, but it's got such a diverse ethnic makeup. But it's got in with that this entrenched criminal element that is there in this one particular city in England. And it is so pervasive there that all international authorities, Interpol and others, had declared this particular city in London as having been the center of all radical Islam in Europe. This is where a lot of the bombings were planned from. This is where a lot of the things in Chechnya were planned from. And a lot of people don't remember the Chechen occupation by the Islamists in the school in Chechnya. The Islamists took this Russian school over, and all the parents were outside begging for their children to be released. These kids were held hostage for the longest time. And then when the terrorists weren't getting what they wanted, they started cutting kids' heads off in the window in front of their parents, one at a time. Now, this kind of horror was not publicized very directly over the national news and other media because this was a war we couldn't talk about. It freaked people out and it scared the media because of the reality of it. But this is what these people do. There's other schools where they've taken them over, and they like to target schools because the kids don't fight back very hard. And so they took another school, they lined all the boys up, pulled their pants down. Any kid that had pubic hair growing, they immediately cut their head off. The other boys who hadn't entered puberty yet, they took over and they put into slavery or as human sacrifices for later because they were considered to be more virginal. This is messed up thinking, and this is all being allowed, and this is all being swept under the rug and given protective cover by these angry white female liberals who pretty much run the show on these protests. And these silly, weak men who go along with them, they need to be educated. And they need to be shut down and mocked because this is about the only way you're going to fight these people is through the market of ideas and public opinion. So free speech is under attack. It's been under attack. You have so many folks on the progressive side, the Marxist side, and all being running cover for the Islamist invasion that's going on. Now, Muslims are not the problem. Most Muslims don't know what they are. They don't care. They just want to be in the family plan of inheritance. By and large, that's pretty much the situation. And then you got about 30% of them are, they're practicing. They pray a few times a day, maybe not all 5 times. But then you got the Islamists who are calling for the loudspeakers to have the call to prayer 5 times a day. The horns, blowing out over the communities and sounding like an air raid siren going off, but not. Very intimidating, very threatening, very pervasive. But they can have that in England, but they can't have somebody out singing Silent Night or any kind of Christian hymns on the streets. Because it might offend them. It might scare them. They can't handle it. Because it's not their culture. This is part 4 of what I talked about before. Now, once they've gotten into your communities and they've gotten into your countries, what they want you to do is become them, not they become you. They do not plan on assimilating. They never did plan on assimilating. So don't expect them to. This whole melting pot idea was about assimilating. These folks don't want to assimilate. You take these Muslim groups culturally, they separate themselves naturally from the Westerners. Because the Westerners, they see Westerners as being dirty infidels who either have to submit to the culture of Islam or pay a jizya tax or be killed. Because that's what's in their book. Who's reading the book? Well, when you catch a lot of these clerics in what the book actually says, their Quran, and you try to hold them accountable on things, then they want to try to say, oh, no, that's not what it says. You're reading it all wrong. Then they want to flip the script, and they don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about 10 other things. So they want to do the gift gallop and run a war of words on you. Don't let it happen. I'm telling you, I'm not an Islamophobe. I'm just a warrior for the life and the country and the God I love. Their God is not a Christian God. Their God is not the same. Don't let anyone ever tell you we all worship the same God, because their definition of who their God is not the same. There's some similarities, but you try to ask them about how to explain a triune God, they just laugh at you like you're the problem. We've got a lot of things to talk about. Alex is coming back in next week. I can't wait to get him back in here. He's been doing quite a bit of reading. He wants to do a little talking about the 9/11 attacks that happened and whether it was fact or fiction on the Pentagon strike. There's interesting topics out there. He has some interesting evidence to try to put forward. I'll probably take the counterpoint view on it. So it might be an interesting discussion. So be checking back in here. We're going to be on this topic. We're going to keep going. We have so much more to talk about. So in the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.